Good afternoon and welcome to Season 3, Episode 1 of the live HOP Careers webinars, which today will focus on careers in human resources. My name's Gareth and this webinar is brought to you by the HOP platform. So HOP stands for Hertfordshire Opportunities Portal. It's a website that we hope every young person and student in Hertfordshire is aware of and familiarises themselves with, because it gives you a whole host of information about a variety of different careers and opportunities within the county, including this webinar today. So the purpose of these webinars is to provide you, so you being students and young people in Hertfordshire or the surrounding area, with information and inspiration from somebody who is already working in human resources. So we've got two fantastic panelists with us today who are going to share their experiences with you. And throughout this webinar, we are going to find out a little bit more about what actually is human resources. We're going to talk about the qualifications, but perhaps more importantly, the skills and qualities that you need within HR. And we'll also talk about how you actually get into HR as well. So a little bit of housekeeping before we get going. So just to reassure you, although hopefully you can see and hear three of us, we can't see or hear any of you, but you do have the opportunity to interact with us. So we really hope that you'll take the opportunity today to ask your questions to Bex or to Aidan, just to find out a little bit more about their roles and what they do. So thank you first of all. So I know that when you registered, some of you did already fill in whether there are any questions or answers that you wanted to know about, and we've incorporated some of those questions into the themes today. But there will be a section at the end specifically for you to put your questions. So you put them in on the questions tab on your dashboard. If you open that out, there's a text box in there. If you type that question into text, it will come through. It's only visible to me, and then I can direct that question either to Bex or to Aidan. So if you want either one of them specifically to answer it, just put their name at the front of it and I'll know to direct it to them. This session is being recorded, so if you can't stay with us all the way through to the end, you will be able to watch it back. But of course, if you're watching it back, you can't then ask your questions live. But do tell your friends about it as well. So if you watch this and think, actually, my friend would really benefit from watching this today, then you can let them know about it as well. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to our panelists and ask them just to give a little introduction about themselves. So starting with Rebecca Healy. Bex, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit more about your career.
Yes, sure. So I'm currently Trust Head of Careers at Chingford Academies Trust, which is 2 secondary schools and a sixth form. And really my career has diversified within the HR arena, so human resources. I started really leaving school with my GCSEs and entered the world of work, wondering what I might get up to, but I chose a big brand like John Lewis to start my career in, because I knew there'd be lots of different opportunities. And fair enough, I came across HR within my first day, of course, on my induction. And really my journey in human resources and my curiosity led on from there, because they've been part of my journey, you know, throughout the whole of my employment history. So that's where my curiosity sparked, and I've been in many various roles, right from entry level, management and leadership. And I'm here today to hopefully answer your questions and help you understand more about the people profession and why you would bother to join it.
Thanks very much, Bex. Aidan, over to you. Good afternoon.
Hi everyone. Yeah, so I'm Aidan Fox. I am currently a senior HR officer in the HR business partner team at Hertfordshire County Council. My sort of route into HR is slightly different from Bex. I realised that I wanted to study human resources after being at school and studying business management, and having a really good business management teacher who sort of talked us through the different aspects of business, so things like marketing and finance and HR. And I really realised that HR was one of those things that that really sparked my interest in learning about people and how to motivate people, learning about employment law and that type of thing. And so I decided to go to university and study management with human resources at university. And part of that, I was managed to go on placement for a year with an oil company, and I worked as an HR administrator there, which was really, really valuable experience. Learning the basics of HR and shadowing a lot of different types of meetings and different types of sort of plans and stuff like that to get a further understanding of HR. And then once I'd completed my my undergraduate degree, I was successful in getting a HR graduate scheme with Hertfordshire County Council, and I rotated around different areas of HR for 2 years, and loved my placement in the HR business partner team, and then managed to secure a permanent position in the HR business partner team, which is where I am today.
Thank you very much for that introduction. We will drill a little bit deeper into both of your experiences. I'm delighted to say we've had a question in already. I think this is the quickest we've ever had a question submitted in. So thank you to the person who submitted that question. We are going to cover that section around university and options that you will take within it. So we'll make sure we answer that. But yeah, for the rest of you that are watching this live at the moment, it's your opportunity to put any questions. So make sure that you feel really, really well informed about human resources. So the first thing that I really want to get your thoughts on, Bex and Aidan, is well, what is human resources? Because I'm aware that lots of people watching this at the moment will be maybe somewhere between year 9 and year 12 or 13 at school. They may have covered HR within a business studies program or course, or it might just be a phrase they've heard. They might have family or friends that do HR. But Bex, what do we actually mean by human resources?
So the people profession and human resources is the life cycle of a worker and workplace. So when you think about joining any work environment, you might be in a very different type of guy. So you could be employed, you could be a contractor. There's different ways you can choose to work and create economic independence for yourself. But ultimately, human resources is the people profession. So wherever you have people working, that is where human resources tend to have a department, and there are different facets of human resources, and they are carved up into 3 different areas. They tend to be human resources, so dealing with the life cycle of employees, so from the point that you look and see an opportunity to the point where you're onboarded and performing. And then you've also got learning and development, which is more about personal and professional development. And you also have organisational design, which is where you look into change management programs and the design of an organisation to get the best out of people and be the best workplace to work in, an environment. So for me, it's people and workplace environments. And the context of those, as we know, especially in this pandemic, can be pretty variable.
Absolutely. So Aidan, perhaps just thinking about the particular area of HR that you've specialised in, what does an average day look like for you? So what have you been doing today before you came onto this webinar, of course?
Yeah, so my role is quite varied. As an HR business partner, I get involved in all the different areas of HR that Bex has talked about. So that can be from things like looking at our terms and conditions, to recruitment, to dealing with employee relations cases, so things like disciplinaries and grievances. Sorry, that's the lights gone off in the office. They're on a timer and I'm not moving much. Apologies. Yeah, so today I was meeting with managers around recruitment. As people may have seen, that with the pandemic and the recovery in the pandemic, there's some difficulties recruiting. So we're having a sort of strategy meeting about how we can best attract candidates and what we can do about that. And then I've also had meetings about organisational design, which is what Bex talked about, and looking at the way of getting the best out of our people and looking at our structures and how they work as well. And then having a conversation as well around some contractual issues. So a real varied day, and that's just today. So but you can specialise in some of those areas. So you can go into, for example, a recruitment team, or you can go into a strategy and reward team where you're looking at things like rewards and benefits and that type of thing. I just tend to be involved in quite a wide range of those aspects of HR.
For sure. So, yeah. I mean, let me throw this question back to you, and then I'd be very keen to get Bex's take on it as well. But what's the most enjoyable elements of HR for you? I mean, presumably there are some people out there who really enjoy being involved in that recruitment process and actually meeting people when they're coming for a job. And I guess perversely, there are people who would probably quite enjoy being at the other end of that when people are leaving the organisation. So what would you say are the most enjoyable aspects of the role?
Is that for me or Bex? Sorry,
Yeah, that's for you, Aidan.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. I think when you help people achieve something to do well in their role. So, for example, if somebody comes to you with a learning and development need, for example, going on something like an apprenticeship or something, and you can see that person doing really, really well and being really successful, or something like a big project at the moment, we've got the diversity and inclusion strategy within the council, and we're seeing really good strides in that, which I think will help people in the organisation as well. And in my role, I'm quite so I work for Children's Services, so I can see a direct impact on the outcome for our young people in Hertfordshire as well, which is really nice. So having that thing of thinking that this project, actually, if we get the right people with the right training in the right place, we can have a real impact on the citizens and young people and families within Hertfordshire. That's probably the most enjoyable part for me, seeing that bigger picture and really achieving that for the citizens of Hertfordshire, but also for our employees and helping them and seeing them succeed.
For sure. Thanks, Beck. Same question to you. What do you find most enjoyable about HR?
Yeah, I mean, Aidan, I totally echo what you've just said, in the sense that in HR, you get to be part of that bigger picture, because you're taking a business's brand and vision and the strategy and making sure all of the policies and processes support people to be at their best for the audience they're serving, as well as themselves within that organisation. So yeah, 100% behind that. In terms of the three different sections, obviously, Aidan, you've mentioned the HR generalist and HR specialist role. And for me, I think that flex between throughout my career, where I've been in specialised roles and then I've moved back to generalist roles and then I've moved back into specialist roles. I love being able to weave my career in a way that it's still within the same industry and the same sector, but actually I can also work in multiple different arenas. Like, I've worked in retail, distribution, catering, construction, and now I'm in education, and I'm still within a profession I love, which is the people profession. So for me, it's given my career huge flexibility choosing HR as a career path.
Thank you. And then what flip question to that is, what's the most challenging areas of HR? And I imagine people have instantly got a vision in their mind of some of those difficult conversations that you might have when someone's going to lose their job, or when you've got some quite difficult conversations to have. So Bex, I mean, is that something that everyone in HR has to deal with at some point? And what are the other challenges?
I wouldn't say it's something that everybody has to deal with, because it will depend on maybe the size of your HR or people team. So although there might be a one point of contact, that might even be a consultancy department that's to the side of a business and a hired in service, rather than being an employed department within your own business that you work in. So you wouldn't necessarily always get involved in like the hiring and firing situation, but ultimately for me, I think the most challenging part of HR has been, I suppose, you have to learn to manage your own emotions, because a lot you're dealing with people and people's careers, livelihoods, and let's face it, you know, personal and professional life, you are one human. So, you know, you don't separate those at the door, and you're helping people to be their best in both arenas and getting that balance. And so sometimes, yeah, the communication aspect and helping and supporting people and coaching them through the right decisions really for them, with the best information and advice you can offer. And sometimes that's legal advice, sometimes it's more of a soft skill in personal development and signposting people to the right steps. So yeah, I'd say communication and managing your own emotions as much as supporting others to do the same.
Yeah. So, Aidan, any challenges that you've come across, or that you know your colleagues have to face?
Yeah, so I think you touched on it there, having some of those difficult conversations with staff. As much as we want employees to really thrive, You know, sometimes we have to have conversations about performance and other things like that. One of my first experiences of working in HR was with an oil company, and during that time, the oil price crashed, which meant we had to have quite large-scale redundancies, and that was quite a lot of people, you know, losing their job, and that was a bit of an eye opener. As much as I was interested in the process and how that was followed, some of those conversations that we had to have with employees and that kind of thing, some aspects of it. I think that's the hardest part, are those type of conversations. Yeah, that's probably what I would say. You touched on it in your answer as well, Gareth. Yeah.
For sure. Okay, so just moving the conversation on, and by the way, I'm aware that there are more questions coming through, which is fantastic. So do keep those questions in. This is a really good opportunity for you to have that direct interaction with either Bex or with Aidan. So just want to talk about how you get into HR. So what are the sorts of qualifications that you might need, or the skills and qualities? So Bex, first of all, if someone was considering a career in HR, are there any subjects at school, either at GCSE level or at A level, sixth form level, that you think someone absolutely must do, or are there any that you would recommend perhaps to do?
I think for me, I've certainly found English a particularly useful skill because even though you might be having those conversations verbally, in HR, regardless of the arena you work in, you do have to communicate and be transparent often about what's happened and what the next steps are. So having a clarity in your writing skills is brilliant. And obviously, if you do have learning needs, that's still something that organisations can have adaptations for and accommodations and adjustments. But for me, English has been a subject I've certainly leaned on a lot. Maths, I would say, has been useful. I certainly wasn't a high flyer. I got my C, but I have lent on that subject, I must admit, because in HR you have to understand budget. Because ultimately you're putting in different programs to support people, so you need to understand budgets. So that's been helpful, and especially percentage increases and decreases has been useful for me. And being able to, I think within the HR profession, it's becoming a lot more evidence-based and data-driven. So again, I suppose the math side of that I learned at school was more to manipulate information so that you can present it and it's understandable to other people in the business, to help them understand the decisions you're making. So obviously those are core subjects, and whichever entry route you take as a qualification level, if you don't get your C's at GCSE, or what would be the equivalent of 4s and 5s now, then you would always have a path to build that learning in at post 16, or when you're getting onto apprenticeships, if that was an entry route you wanted to consider. I can't think of any other GCSE level subjects, but when I did my access course, which was the equivalent to A levels to get into the degree I did in HRM, I found that law was a really interesting A level to do, because it gave me a good grounding and basis of what English law was all about. And I also did sociology, and that really gave me a good understanding of like society and how it sort of interacts and communities are created, because that then mapped into the way organizations work as their own ecosystems, really. So that was, that's been fascinating as a link for me.
Sure. And Aidan, anything that you wanted to add to that around subjects that you did that may have been useful?
Yeah, of course. So English, I would say as well, is quite important. That ability to communicate effectively within HR is really important. Maths as well, I would say probably isn't as important, but you need to have a sort of basic understanding of maths. I was lucky that when I was at school, I had the option to do business management as well, which was really helpful, because then you start to understand how businesses work and what they're looking for, and all does link in. So marketing links in with HR, and so does finance, and so do all the other aspects of business management. So understanding how businesses work is really helpful. And I was also lucky enough that we did accounting as well at school. Slightly different in Scotland, where we had standard grades and higher, but standard grades I think are the same as GCSEs and higher at A level. So I was lucky enough that I was able to do accounting as well. Although it gave me a better understanding of how accounting works, I wouldn't say it was as important as business management or English.
Sure. Okay. So, I mean, I think what I'm picking up from you guys is that functional levels of English and maths that you would pick up at GCSE are really important. So, do work on getting your grades at GCSE English and maths. But subject choice beyond that isn't so significant. It's not like you're going into medicine where you've got to have done biology and chemistry. There's plenty of options. I know that perhaps business studies is a subject that would touch on aspects of HR and different business functions, as you were just alluding to there, Aidan. So taking it a step further, now I know that both of you guys actually did human resources specific degree qualifications, but I mean, first of all, is it mandatory to get a degree to go and work in HR? And secondly, if someone really wanted to go to university, are there any particular courses that you would recommend? So Bex, over to you first of all.
Yeah, sure. So I certainly didn't have a degree prior to getting into HR. So I really loved the employee life cycle that I was seeing whilst a retail assistant and team leader in John Lewis, and applied to be an entry-level recruitment coordinator. And that's how I got into HR. And from there, I then went into learning and development. And I realised that I absolutely had a love for this career sort of strand or thread and theme. And so I thought, actually, now is the time I'm going to go and have a look at college courses and see how I can get the equivalent of my A levels, because I was over 19 at that point, but had had the work experience within HR to then pursue the degree. So I got then my essentially like the equivalent of A levels in law, sociology, psychology, and English. And actually, when we went back to the subject, Gareth, if you want to pursue HR beyond undergrad, I recommend psychology at A level, because it does get more mathematical, because masters in this particular subject, HR, are often a Master of Science rather than an art, which is the undergrad. So, I mean, I think it depends on the path of degree you take, but keep in mind that psychology will help you with the data-driven aspect of higher education in human resources. So yeah, for me, I think entry level, you can certainly start in a business, get that ground level business awareness, and then move within and get an entry level position. You could also become an apprentice, which would allow you to join at post 16 or post 18, or even at any point in your career as you're transitioning into the sector. But a degree isn't essential, but I do believe it's really helped my career, especially in the management and the leadership. So the more breadth and the more I've got under my belt and the more I've loved my career, the more that's what's driven my choice to choose higher education, because I thought, I want to know more about this. I want to understand the theory. I want to understand my own sector more. And that's what drove me to get my degree.
Sure. Aidan, I mean, you said that you already knew you wanted to go into HR. So tell us about the degree program that you did and how you think that's helped you.
Yeah, of course. So just to follow on what Beck said as well, is I don't think you need to have a degree to get into HR as well. There's other routes such as the apprenticeships which Beck's mentioned as well. But I decided to go to university after school to study what was management and human resource management. And I chose that because it gave me some flexibility, because I could have chosen after my first year to change to either management with marketing or management with international business. So I had a bit of flexibility in case I wanted to change my mind. But I did always have my mind set on being in HR. So it really helped me understand a lot of theory, and also really helped me improve my report writing skills and stuff like that as well, because you have to do a lot of essays and that type of thing, being able to analyze data. But yeah, it really gave me that I found that it gave me a deeper understanding, because it was more, obviously I did business management at school, but then when I went to university and chose to study HR, we started talking about sort of more specialised HR type topics. So things about recruitment, things about organisational design, things about leadership training courses, things like that, and learnt a lot about the theory. And once I'd gone into university and I went into working in the oil industry, I could see how a lot of those theories and a lot of those models that I'd learnt at university were actually used in the workplace. And I remember thinking when I got there, I was like, oh, this was a lot of what I've learned has actually been used in the workplace. And I can see Beck smiling because she's probably been similar. So yeah, it was that from that point of view, going to university helped me understand how those models and how those theories are applied in the workplace. But you can learn that on the job or through an apprenticeship or through another route as well.
Yeah, okay, fine. Now you've both been quite explicit about that. So a degree can be desirable, but it's not essential. And there are other really good routes into HR, including the apprenticeship routes, which we know are coming up more and more often now as well. So that's thinking about some of the qualifications. But what I'm keen to hear from you is, what are the skills and qualities that you think somebody needs? So regardless of whether they've got a first in human resources management or they're coming out of school, perhaps after GCSEs, what skills would you see in someone, Bex, who's really good in HR?
I think having quite a calm nature is helpful, and you have to be really organised, because especially when you're in a generalist role and so much of your workload is like time and deadline driven. So being able to manage your time and your workload is really important. So organisation is a key skill. We were saying before that obviously English as a subject is great because your communication, both verbally and written, is really important. So I would say that is also an integral skill. But actually for me, as I've developed in my career, it's a skill that you do hone, and it's professional courage. And that for me is something, it's about making sure that within yourself you develop a level of assertiveness that allows you to communicate what you believe is right by the company as well as the people within it, and having that professional judgment and being able to express your opinions in a professional manner, I think is so important. So yeah, for me, professional courage, communication skills and organisation skills.
Yeah, Aidan, anything you want to add to that list?
Yeah, no, I agree. I also think being understanding of people's different situations as well is really helpful, because obviously you're dealing with people, people can be in sort of difficult situations and people can experience things differently as well. So one of the things that we talked about at university was the change curve, and if you're implementing change, people experience change at different times, and understanding that people will experience things in a different way, and being able to explain and get your point across as well. And I think building relationships as well, being able to be accountable for work that you're doing as well, is really important. So yeah, just to add on what Beck said, I would say those three things as well.
Okay.
Oh, and creativity, of course.
Yeah. So tell us what you mean by that, Bex.
Because you're essentially designing all the time, whether it's designing your diary for the day or week because you think, oh my goodness, I've got all of this going on and I've got to be very creative to get it all done, or you're having to work with many different business areas on maybe the development of a new policy or adapting it to support the business with change. So you have to be quite solution focused and solution orientated. So yeah, breaking down those supposed problems, there's always a solution. So yeah, being creative is key.
Okay, all right. I've had exactly the same problem that Aidan had at the start of the webinar, that my lights have just gone off. So I'm going to ask you this question. I'm going to step away from the screen, but don't panic, I'm not very far away. So the next section is to really look at the prospects for HR in the future. And really, this is just to reassure everyone that there's always going to be a demand for HR teams. So Bex, could you perhaps just go into a little bit more detail about that and perhaps explain what areas of HR do you think there's going to be more demand for in the future?
Yeah, sure. So In terms of the people profession's longevity and existence, it certainly will remain, because wherever there's people working, you will need people to support them in their workplaces. And the CIPD, who are the Chartered Institute of Personnel Development, are a membership organisation that represent the people profession and the people that work in it. And they actually did a recent it was called Hackathon, and where everybody in the industry was able to pile in and give their ideas about what we think our profession will look like in 2030 and beyond that. And really, they were talking about there's going to be internal change in the design of businesses, flatter structures, different working environments that HR are going to have to start navigating, and that people will start expecting as well. There's going to be lots of technological and digital changes, and we've already experienced some of those with the pandemic and how quickly flexible working's had to be adopted. And actually, what does that look like? As we start to return to workplaces, naturally, diversity, huge changing of demographic in terms of our age and labour market workforce. So who's available to work, who can work, and we've got an ageing population. So it's making sure that the knowledge is transferred and that we're also creating routes into industry. And I suppose, let's face it, climate change is a huge impact on the way organisations are operating these days. So yes, we're in people profession and HR, but sustainability of our processes and the way people move and operate and achieve business for their audiences is key. So you can see already we are a profession and we're a business, we're a department within businesses often, but our exposure to all business arenas is happening constantly.
Yeah. What do you think, Aidan, about the changing role and purpose of HR?
Yeah, I think it's always changing, and going back, HR was probably referred to as personnel, which was very different to what HR is now, and it's always changing, it's always adapting, because things on externally are always changing as well as internally. So if we look at Brexit, for example, and how that's affecting certain aspects of work, some of the laws may change going forward, some of the employment laws and things like that. So we need the human resources function to change with the times as well, and to stay on top of trends and stuff like that. So we are always sort of adapting, and I think there will always be a need for HR, because when you're dealing with people, there's always a need for an HR or a people function. Rebecca gave a really sort of thorough answer there on a lot of the things that are impacting HR as well. So the only other one that I would add on there is Brexit, really.
For sure. Okay, thank you. Right then, well, what I think we're going to do. Oh, sorry, there's one more question I wanted to ask you before we go into the questions that have been submitted, of which there are quite a few now. Is what pathways are there? So if you go into HR, so both of you are, well, so you're fairly young in your working life, and you've got plenty of professional years in front of you both. But typically, what other avenues might you go into, having had a really good experience in HR and a good grounding in HR to start with? So, Aidan.
Yeah, I've got a lot of people that I know who've worked in HR have gone on to do a lot of different things. I know some people that have gone into work in health and safety, so quite heavily linked to HR and processes as well. Some people have decided to go into finance, to go in.
We just
to marketing, to go into a lot of different things. Some people even use their HR experience to go and open their own business at some people and that type of thing. So yeah, you can go into a lot of different sort of industries, different professions with human resources, because most businesses you'll be dealing with people. So it's a useful experience to have and useful skills to have.
Of course. For you, Bex?
Yeah, sure. I mean, already in my career alone, I've diversified my HR experience. So, for example, I've worked in construction, supporting businesses with quality management. So, actually reviewing all of their policies and processes. But that was actually from how they run the business. So it still factored all of the skill set I'd learned about from my recruitment days, and I was able to apply that to a completely different role, which was a business manager role in construction for a short while. So that was really fun, and it really helped me understand how important and integral it is as a HR specialist and generalist to always keep in touch with other areas of the business, because the moment those communication lines close, you lose perspective of the rest of the organisation you're serving. And more recently, I have been a volunteer, so supporting schools with information on careers routeways across the board of all the different sectors locally. So the skill set really that I suppose I've brought forward from working in HR allowed me to become a volunteer, and then that volunteer has led me into being in a leadership position in a school where I'm supporting careers for the curriculum. So I certainly use all of my skill set from HR, but I'm in like completely different roles, but we're still within the people profession. So it's certainly different, and I would say the opportunities are relatively endless, because once you've built the foundational skill set in HR, they do apply to so many different roles.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Right then, well, look, I think without any further ado, I want to go into the questions that have been submitted. And you're not too late if you've got a question you're desperate to ask Bex or to Aidan. Please do take the opportunity now in the next sort of 10 minutes or so to get those questions across. So you could do that through the questions tab. That's only if you're watching live, of course. If you are watching this back, though, if you're watching this on YouTube and there's a question you really want to ask, do drop it into the comments section underneath the video, and we'll make sure that we direct them to Bex or Aidan. So first question that came in, this one came in right at the very top of the webinar, and we've kind of answered it, but it'd be good to ask it explicitly. So what do I have to take at uni to work in HR? So Aidan, you spoke about almost a specific HR degree that you did, and as a postgrad, Bex, you have as well. But if someone was still interested in going into HR, you mentioned psychology as well. What are the sorts of degrees, or what are the sorts of families of degrees that someone might do, Bex?
I would certainly say anything that's to do with psychology, business, or specifically human resource management. But remember, if you start a degree in human resource management, the first 2 years do include business modules, because like I've been saying, you have to interact with business. You don't get to work in isolation when you're in HR. So your undergrad degree embodies that, and it makes sure that you have business units. Like I did accounting and finance in year 1. And I did labour market research and relations. So it's a really great career and route way to do the undergrad. But what I have also found with the degree is that in year 3, I was able to choose to either go more the business sort of side of HR, into what Aidan was saying, into like marketing and business, or I could have chosen like an international human resource choice. And I actually went international because I wasn't sure if I wanted to work abroad at that point. I wasn't brave enough to do a placement and the Erasmus scheme, but I certainly wanted to study different cultures and how different HRM departments existed across the globe. And that gave me a really good understanding of whether I was going to choose after my undergrad to move abroad or choose an international or globally international company. So yeah, I think degrees are great, but at the same time, your A-level options will provide you a route into the profession.
Sure, okay, I think that's a really important point to emphasise, and we've spoken about that there are apprenticeship options that are available as well. I mean, Aidan, if you had your time again, would you do exactly the same degree course at the same university that you did, or professionally, would you have made some changes now in hindsight?
I think if at the time I was able to do an apprenticeship in HR, I would seriously consider that option, so that I could earn whilst I was learning as well. At the time when I was at university, I was trying to hold down a part-time job at the same time as learning, which was quite difficult at times. But yeah, I would have considered that. What I would say is, when I did my undergrad in HR, but when I went on to do my masters, in human resource management. There were a lot of people with different types of degrees doing that as well, who'd gone into HR. There was people who'd done things in history, for example, or loads of different types of degrees that weren't connected to business. Although I would say that if you are considering a career in HR, I would say if you are going to go through the university route, I would pick one that is linked. But just because you've studied something else at undergrad level, it doesn't mean that you have to then rule out human resources or doing a master's in human resources. There's the lights again. Apologies.
Wave your arms.
There we go. Yeah, just because you've done an undergrad in something else doesn't mean that you can't then, for example, go on to a graduate scheme in human resources or go on to study a master's in human resources. We had a completely different mix of people in my master's sort of classes with different types of backgrounds and different degrees as well.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
and also just to add to that, you don't have to necessarily do a degree in human resources to get a human resources qualification. So there are many training providers that would work with employers or with you through your own personal time to get a qualification in HR, and they're often accredited by the CIPD. They're not the only membership organisation and awarding organisation that would support you with a HR qualification, but they're certainly a globally renowned organisation. So even if you didn't choose like an intermediate, advanced or higher apprenticeship or degree apprenticeship, or to choose to do a degree, whether undergrad or masters, you can still qualify and get your level 3 or level 5 qualification or level 7 through a training provider.
Sure. Okay. Next question. I think we've probably, it's in two parts, but we've probably answered the second part, which is how should you look at starting your HR career? We've said that there's a range of different options there, but what work experience do you suggest to get into HR? So are there any experiences someone could still gain whilst they're still at school or still studying that will, I guess, enlighten them a little bit about what HR might look like? Bex?
Any opportunity that involves public speaking will do you and serve you well, because you have to often present ideas, or you're trying to essentially influence or share information. So even if it's to small groups of people or large audiences, public speaking is always going to come in handy. So as a work experience, you know that's fantastic if you get an opportunity to use that skill and develop that skill. Can't think of anything else right now off the top of my head.
Yeah. Aidan, any experiences people could gain you think that will help them?
Yeah, I would say so I was lucky that I managed to do some work experience while I was at school in an HR department. But I would say it doesn't have to necessarily be within an HR department. It could be within a business setting. So something in an office, so you can see what it's like working in an office. You can see what the sort of culture's like, and see if that's something that where you would want to work. Obviously, things are changing now, where people are working from home more often and that type of thing. But at the time when I did it, it was nice to see how things worked in an office and get a bit of even little things like seeing the language used in emails and that type of thing. So just because it might be difficult to get some experience within an HR department, don't let that put you off. I would say anything that is similar to get an idea of how businesses work.
Yeah, good point, Aidan. Probably even shadowing or being and doing work experience alongside any manager or leader, and you will see how every minute of the day they're having to interact with people and manage and develop them. So yeah, that's probably an inroad, and there's certainly quantities of people that are in management and leadership roles that you could go and do work experience with in any sector.
Yeah, so I think perhaps you're alluding to it there. It's that keenness and curiosity that someone would have about, well, why does the organisation run like this? And I guess one that everyone could relate to, just thinking about your own school setting and just thinking about, is this a place that I'd want to come and work, rather than think, is this a place I'd want to become and be educated, but is this a place I'd want to work? What are the staff interactions and relationships like here? You know, for instance, if one of your teachers is off sick, then there'll be a rota for cover, and that's someone performing some form of HR role is responsible for that, aren't they? So I mean, the point is that HR is going on all around us all the time, and it's just having that curiosity and alertness to pick up on that. Next question that's come in, it's a good question, and probably I'm guilty of skipping over this earlier, but what does an HR generalist or what does HR specialist mean? So what's the difference between them? Aidan, do you want to have the first crack at that one?
Yeah, of course. So I would say we'll start off with HR specialist. So an HR specialist is somebody who focuses in a particular area within HR. So for example, if we take recruitment, most of their job will be spent directly on recruitment campaigns, looking at how best to get candidates, selection methods and that type of thing. Whereas a generalist, that's just one area of specialism. You can go into benefits, comp and bens, or you can go into a lot of different areas, even HR systems and stuff like that. So looking at the stuff on the computers. But yeah, the HR generalist will touch a lot of different areas of HR. So an HR generalist will work in recruitment, will also work along with HR systems, will work along with comp and bens, or sometimes it's called, reward in some other organisations. But they will not be as specialist, if you like. They will not have as much maybe knowledge or spend as much time in that area of HR, but will touch different bits of HR and influence different areas of HR.
Sure, okay. And there's a really good question that's just come in as you've been giving that definition. I think it's linked actually, so I'm going to go straight to this one. And Aidan's had the lights turn out, so it's just his silhouette for the moment. So let me ask Bex this question. Bex, what do we mean by HR management?
Okay, so human resource management, it's kind of a theoretical and American term because that is the origin of our industry. It did start in the US as a premise, and globally, people management has become something within the business and a recognised business arena. So originally around a board table, you maybe wouldn't have had IT and human resources, but nowadays we certainly have a seat. So it's making sure that there's always, I suppose, an element of control and support network to ensure that the people, which are just as much a resource as finance could be, as the equipment and the assets a business has, are all contributing to the end goal that business has and that vision. So for me, human resource management in a nutshell is just a strand of business management. I think that's the easiest way I could explain that.
Sure. I mean, I'm trying to think of an example that's something that perhaps everyone understand, but if we take a supermarket, for instance, so a supermarket will know that, let's say they know that at Christmas there's going to be a huge demand for staff, so they're going to need to have more people working around Christmas time. The supermarket might also be considering that they're going to go to a delivery option in the future. So I guess an HR manager would be thinking, well, look, in 3 months' time, we're going to need to get lots of staff on a casual basis. So how do we get them in? They'd be thinking we're going to need to train delivery staff for when that happens in 12 months time. So I mean, is that what an HR management is? It's around that more overview of what the organisation's going to need over a longer period of time.
Yeah, it's strategic, which is essentially like taking the big picture and breaking it down into more small projects and working out how all those projects come together towards that end goal. So yeah, that's where those organisation and creativity skills certainly play their part, because being able to see the big picture and then also taking it right down to the detail of is somebody going to be welcomed on their first day? Are they going to have their badge? Are they going to have their uniform? Are they going to want to stay for the second day? It's taking that idea from boardroom right through to somebody staying and performing and being happy.
Okay, and I'm going to carry on with this analogy of the supermarket here. Hopefully it's something everyone can relate to, but I guess a supermarket without an HR management might think it might get towards December, and someone will think, the branch manager think, oh, it's getting quite busy in here. Well, we really should have someone else on the checkout, so we'll get someone else in to work on that checkout for tomorrow. But unless someone's looking at it from an oversight, they won't again look at that big picture and think, well, we should have thought of this 3 months ago, or we should think further ahead. So actually, we don't want to employ someone full time now because we may not need that same number of people in January. So it's more of a long-term plan and a long-term vision. I'm probably doing HR management a disservice there, but I think the picture we're trying to paint here is that HR management is someone who's responsible for overseeing that whole process of what an organisation needs. So sorry, I've butchered that a little bit. I'll let you take this question. So Aidan, I'm going to ask you this question because it's one about A-level choices or subject choices. So is doing humanities such as religion, ethics and philosophy good as an A-level for a future in HR? So how might those subjects benefit someone?
Yeah, so I think there's a huge focus on diversity and inclusion within the human resource of industry at the moment, and understanding different cultures, different beliefs, and that type of thing can go a long way to understanding people as well and how people work and that kind of thing. So yeah, I do think that would help. I didn't study it myself, so I don't have much knowledge on what's covered there. But I do think anything that's around people, which it will involve, and understanding people's differences and accepting people's differences, I think that would be extremely helpful.
Sure. Okay, and then this is going to be the final question unless one gets submitted in the next 30 seconds or so. If you have got another one, this is your last chance to get it in. We've kind of touched on this already, Bex, but I think it's such an important question. It's such a good question that it's worth asking it again and just getting you to re-emphasize what you said earlier. So the question is, what qualities do you need to have to go into HR?
Right, so being creative, solution focused, being organised, being able to articulate yourself both verbally and in written communication, so English, but also, of course, if you're working with an international company, who knows languages? And then also, Aidan really kind of brought to the front there that you need to be empathetic, you need to listen. So again, the communication skills there are pulling through, but let's face it, all businesses are becoming more data driven and evidence focused, so not just going with emerging trends or the hot topics that happen to be trending on social media. We can't make business decisions based on that alone. We have to make sure that it's the right thing for business and people. So obviously being able to understand and also represent data is really useful too.
Okay, thank you. And there was one more question that came in just before the deadline, Aidan, and it's a really good question, and it's perhaps a really good concluding question as well. So you've obviously really done something, and you've said something that resonated with this question here. So where should I look to try and kick off a career in HR? So where would you go? So if you've decided now, you've watched this video, HR's the career for me. I want to get my first job in that industry. Where would you recommend someone look, Aidan?
Yeah, so I would say CIPD website, which Bex talked about earlier on, which is sort of the governing body for HR, is really, really useful. Got lots of useful information. There's also some really useful podcasts as well. A lot of different human resources podcasts as well, if you prefer to listen rather than to read things as well. And I think have a look at different job adverts online for different aspects of HR as well, because within there you will see a person's specification, which will tell you what they're looking for in an applicant, what kind of experience they're looking for, what kind of skills they're looking for, or even qualifications. So although we've talked about a lot of that today, you can go away and have a look as well in different sort of job descriptions and job specifications as well.
And Bex, thinking about someone who might be going straight from school, they might have slightly limited options for organisations that are looking for people with experience, but presumably those jobs do exist that you can go straight into HR roles straight from school.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say count yourself in. Ultimately, you've got to have that interest in people and in connecting them with business. So, I would say if you're in an interview, I would express your interest in how people work in business and how you can support them being their best. And really, in terms of experience, any way that you can demonstrate your creativity, whether that's through taking a portfolio with you that shows what you've looked into in terms of the different areas of HR, and in interview, just make it really clear that you have really vested interest in people within organisations and the way organisations work. And I think that curiosity will really support your interview skills and coming across well. So yeah, good luck with it, and we hope to see you all future flying in HR.
That's it. Yeah. Thanks. I've got on the screen at the moment the CIPD logo, and there's a couple of sections within their website that you were particularly keen to highlight. First of all, do you just want to explain who the CIPD are and why anyone who's watching this webinar may want to go and look at their website?
Yeah, so ultimately it's the global membership body for human resources, and this is where you can get loads of information, not only about learning locations. So if you wanted to choose a study route and a further learning route, you can do that here. You can also find out once you are on a route of human resource learning, how you become a student member. But there's a lot of resources that are open source, so that you can access without being a member, and they will really help you with your understanding in getting into this as a career choice. So it will explain to you the 3 different areas that we've mentioned: HR, L&D and OD. It will also talk to you about what a HR generalist and specialist are, and how underneath those, to try and demystify the people profession, we've basically created 12 career options, and some of them Aidan's mentioned today, so have a look at those. There's also a professions map on the website, so ultimately this gives you an understanding of the core skills required if you were in any one of those chosen areas of HR or within a generalist or specialist role. And I think just really the organisation supports you in grasping what the people profession's all about. And one thing that they're certainly saying at the moment is believe in the power of the people profession, because people make businesses go round. And, you know, if you're interested in that mechanism of the way people interact with business, you can't go far wrong. So use the website. I'm also the student lead in Hertfordshire. So you can find me on LinkedIn. You can always send me questions if you're interested to learn more about CIPD or just HR in general and you would like signposting. I'm sure I'll be able to help you.
Okay, I'm just showing you the CIPD website on screen at the moment. It's fairly straightforward. I'm typing CIPD into Google and it'll be the first thing that comes up. So final thing from me, I mean, first of all, is to say thank you so much to those of you that have watched this session, particularly those of you that watched it live. I really, really do admire your dedication to come home from a busy day at school and then log on to watch a webinar about your career, which may feel like it's a very, very long way off. But really, I do think that hopefully you'll have really benefited from watching this session today. The screen that you've got in front of you at the moment, that shows you our HOP. So I mentioned the HOP website earlier. So this is our one-stop shop for careers information in Hertfordshire. This video, as well as the 35 previous ones that we've done, covering a slightly different role in industry every week, are all available on there. So if you've enjoyed this, I do recommend that you look through that, share it with your family and friends as well. You might find that there are other career topics that you'd like to explore a little bit as well in the same format as this. Do follow our HOP platforms as well. We will regularly update that with information as well that may well be relevant to you. But most of all, let me say thanks ever so much to Aidan and to Bex for giving up their time this afternoon and in preparation for this session and sharing their experiences and hopefully really bringing to life for you human resources. So as Bex said a little bit earlier, hopefully those of you that are watching now will be the future of Hertfordshire's human resources teams of the future. So Bex and Aidan, thanks ever so much for giving up your time. Really appreciate it. Thanks for sharing your experiences with us. That's it from today then. As I said, this session will be available to watch back on our HOP website. Next week we'll be looking at careers in physiotherapy, so very different strand to have a look at next week. And that's someone telling me to finish the webinar. The lights have gone out for me as well. So thank you very much. Take care and best of luck with your career choices.